And welcome back to the Authenticity in Action podcast. And today I am super, super excited, as I am for all my guests, but particularly today, to have the one and only Christine Blosdale in the house. I've been on Christine's podcast and been following her for a while. And for those that don't know Christine, she is the expert authority coach for entrepreneurs, coaches, business leaders that are ready to command attention. And part of that is, being able to tap into their authentic message. And Christine is an internationally recognized media personality, 5-time best-selling author, which inspired me on my journey. And she did help me through self-publishing. And she's been everywhere and helped clients everywhere. And I really, really, I know very few people who are probably more authentic in their space and what they own than Christine. So welcome to the podcast.
I'm going to cry.
You can just send me a check for that.
That was so good. And can I just say too, I'm so proud of you. I've just seen the trajectory of where you've come from and where you're going, and how you use your authenticity to reach people and to touch them and to change lives. And I'm just, like I said, I'm just so proud of the work that you're doing. So thank you for inviting me, first of all, on your show. And yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, you were one of the first people I was like, okay, I've got to reach out to Christine. Like, that's just bam. Your, network is wide and varied. You are on all the social channels, and your content is incredibly authentic, whether it's funny or, you're embarking on your own wellness journey, which you've started documenting like this week, which is probably the hardest thing, to be open and vulnerable and to live it. And part of the premise of this podcast is that authenticity is a really cool buzzword. Like, yeah, I'm being authentic and I'm da-da-da. But I wanted to dig into it with people and the tagline of this podcast, authenticity is not a vibe, it's a verb. It's a doing word. Yeah. And it's hard, gritty work. And I wanted to dig into people's perceptions of what they think authenticity is in their field, and then how are they living that, so we can, show people that it can be done. Doesn't matter your profile, your walk of life. It doesn't have to be always this manufactured persona. And you're in the field of branding and, helping people get their stories out there. So this is like highly relevant sort of space that you're in all the time, and you see all versions of people's authenticity or not.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we're in a space right now as a species that the Kardashian-esque vision of perfection, not just physical, but I've got my S together, right? I'm very successful and everybody wants me, and all that perfectionist model is going the way of the dodo bird, as so many of the societal structures that we thought we could rely on. And what we as human beings are doing right now, we're craving authenticity and relatability. And so that's what when I work with my clients, that's the first thing I say is you need to show up, and you need to show your potential clients, customers, audience, whoever they are, that avatar, that you are authentic and that you're trustworthy. Because if you don't have that trustworthiness and you're not authentic, people are not going to connect. We are craving that. And that's why places like TikTok, are exploding, because real people are really connecting to their tribe and their community. And you can't do that if you're not being authentic and real.
And people pick it up like 1,000 miles away if they're being sold to or pitched at or whatever. They just switch off. But when you actually see someone being real, it's like, oh, they get me, they understand me.
Absolutely. An example of that is as I was scrolling on my TikTok the other day, as I do every single day, several times a day, there was this woman who has a small business from Australia. She creates pajama sets, right? Very niche business, but she documents the struggles of being a small business and getting, getting the patterns right and getting this, that, and the other, and all of the struggles that we have when we first start our business, and when it's a product like that, all the things that go into it. And I've admired her for her honesty and her authenticity, but then she posted a video where it was bloopers. In other words, it was she flew to Bali with a girlfriend who was going to be the model, and they were be all these not sexy shots, but like beautiful photos. And she just let the camera roll, and they were being goofy, they were being silly little girls, and funny. And she put that up there, and I said, you know what, based on that, I went in and bought a set for my wife for her birthday, right?
Yeah.
And dropped some money, right?
Yeah.
Dropped some money. And she was so taken by that, because I said, the reason why I bought from you is because of that blooper reel and how much fun you're having. And I wanted to reward you. Could I get that pajama set from that other pajama maker that's, got more money than no, I really want to support that, and that's what's happening more and more. That is being rewarded. So you don't have to worry about being perfect. There is no such thing, first of all, of it and it would be exhausting to try to do it all the time.
Yeah, it's just hard. So over your career as podcast host, branding expert, what I'm interested to find now is how you now define authenticity, and how has that definition for you evolved over your, professional career, and I guess personally as well?
I think, and you had tapped into it a little bit, the moments that we have of being vulnerable. I mean, Brene Brown is, made vulnerability,
Yeah, a trendy word, a
Yeah.
hashtag.
Yeah. But what she says is very true. And so what I've found is that even though throughout my whole career, 20 years in broadcast journalism, I was a producer, I was a host on air, I did lots of interviews, and I held it together really, really well, and I presented as well as I could. It was always about the guest too. It was never about me. That's the other thing. If you've got a big ego, people smell that too, and it turns people off. And so luckily I never had that issue. But those moments where I was able to be vulnerable and have that emotion and take the time, especially like on air. I remember I was listening to a tape. We were listening to sound from the civil rights movement in America, and I believe it was Fannie Lou Hamer who was talking about what happened to her when she was arrested for trying to register, to get people to register to vote, and the brutality that she suffered. And she's recounting the story, right? And you can hear it in her voice that as she's recanting the story, she's reliving the absolute violent vitriol that these racist police officers had for her and for Black people in general. And when we came back from that clip, I couldn't talk. And I was on air, and I was supposed to go into it was a fundraiser, right? So we're trying to raise money for the archives and everything. And I remember just like, I needed to hold space for her, for Fannie Lou. I needed to hold space for the trauma that she went through, so that I was not going to just jump right back in and go, okay, well, that was Fannie Lou Hamer. No, that was a horrific thing to go through. But the audience really respected my respect for that. We don't need to fill everything. We don't need to fill blank spaces all the time. We need to sometimes just stop. And so with that, I gained a lot of respect from the audience, and they trusted me. And trust is really, really important in whatever business you do. If you're an author, if you're a coach, people are coming to you for guidance, for help, and for a service that you're providing. And you need to develop that trust. part of that is showing that you are an expert at what you do, and you can be trusted in that way, but also that if they fumble or fall, that you've got them,
And
That's really important.
it's a gift to have, to get that trust from a customer or a client or whatever. And it's also something that you should deeply respect, and then you being authentic lets you treat it the way that it should be. Like
Absolutely.
we've all probably had experiences, me most recently, like where you have invested trust in a coach or a mentor, and it turns out they were not the people that they led you believe. And that's, soul destroying when that happens. It's crushing, because you're like, how did I believe all of that? And that does make you a little bit cynical when you start talking to other people about, they want to mentor you or help you. And you're like, yeah, well, this didn't go so well last time, and I kind of fell down the trap. But I think in any space, if someone gives you that trust, you need to like treasure that and treat it for the gift that it is. And that
I
is
can't
true authenticity as well.
I can't tell you the number of clients that have come to me after they've been royally ripped off by
Mm,
somebody,
mm,
and it's like it's like a dog who's been beaten. They come up to you, they go, are you going to take me to, like, are you going to
mm,
rip me off? And it's a shame, and
mm,
especially in the publishing area. Sorry,
mm.
people um, that are in the publishing business, but there are a lot of charlatans. And with a book, better than anybody, Lisa, because you've written an amazing book. But when you put your faith into somebody and you pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to get your book published and out there, and you're hoping that that this company or this person is going to help you, and they rip you off, it's
Mm,
soul destroying. And so a lot of times my work, my job, a large part of it, is getting my clients to not only trust me to help
mm,
them, but to trust the world, right? To
mm,
trust their partners, to trust life.
mm,
And it's very, very important. I remember
mm,
I remember one thing that really shook my trust in humanity was something that happened on the playground when I was a little kid. And it took me a long time. I was very shy as a
mm,
kid because I did not I that trust was broken. And it was a simple thing of two kids, me and some girl, playing on a, well, they call them teeter totters or
yeah,
seesaws.
seesaws. Yep,
The,
yep.
okay. Now, if you've ever been on a seesaw, you must have trust in that other person.
Yeah, they're not going to get off.
They're not going to get off, especially when you're up in the air.
Yep.
And so we were playing, and it was, I go down, I go up. She goes down, she goes up. This is so much fun. And she decided, with a little devilish look in her eye, that when I was up in the air at the highest point, that she
Yeah,
was going, and she was down, she was going to just get off that seesaw.
yeah.
And I came crashing down. And not to get woo woo on you, but
Mm,
the part of your body that you hit is
mm,
sacred.
mm,
It's your, you know,
mm,
it's your connection to earth and everything. And I was in so much pain, and I just couldn't believe that she did that. I was like, how cruel. Like, why would you do
mm,
that? I never
mm,
understood that. But for the longest time, it took me a great amount of time to gain that trust back.
mm,
That's why, if you're a coach or a consultant, if you have somebody that comes to you who's experienced that lack of trust, they've trusted somebody with their money, with their life, with their book, whatever,
mm.
and they've been let down or slammed down,
Yeah.
you really need to work on getting them not only to trust themselves,
Mm.
right? Like, how did I get myself? A lot of
Their
times they'll come to
judgment.
me, they'll go, I was so stupid. Why did I do that?
Mm,
Why did I? But no, no, you weren't stupid. No, you weren't. No,
mm,
that charlatan was saying all this stuff that they would
mm.
do for you, and you gave it a chance. You gave it a go.
Yep.
So it's really important to gain that back, and that is being authentic to your core.
Yep.
Um,
And And to the work, to the work, that's what you do. And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it's, when you've had that broken, it's like, eh, well, I'm not, and you do. I've felt that recently. Like, how did I let myself get in that position? But then you're like, you do the best you can with what you know. We don't know all the answers. And it's very hard to see. Some people are so good at what they do. It's very hard to see behind the curtain and go, eh. And then by the time you start to feel a little ick, you're already so in, you're like, oh no, that you start to, you
Yeah.
know, accept some things or not think that what you're thinking is right. And then you just wind up. And it's unfortunate, the world, and that's what gives coaches a bad name, and coaching and
Yeah.
mentoring is these sort of people. So, as we're talking about, like, you're saying how in society we've moved away from like the needing to be perfect, like, the Kardashianisms. And it's a fine line, I think, that entrepreneurs and business experts and coaches, that so many people are going out on their own and building their personal brands. And in your experience, what's the difference between creating a brand that feels authentic versus one that simply looks authentic, and they're trying to show their authentic self but also maintain a professional presence?
Yeah.
And like, the world of TikTok can be a squirrely one where you can get lured into doing the chicken dance and other things like that, and you're like, well, how does that align with my professional brand? Is someone going to look at that and they're going to disagree with what I've done and they're going to think I'm a clown? But then I need to show how I'm real. And it's that real dichotomy in people's, you can see the struggle of how they do that. What are your thoughts on that?
It's so much based on the personality. So
Mm,
I have clients that are in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, and they're all different, right? The
mm,
personalities are all different. Some I'm like, we need to make sure that you write that book and get
mm,
that bestseller
mm,
moniker so we can build you up as a expert
mm,
authority, right?
mm,
And then there's others that are like screaming to do video. They need to
mm,
be out there because they have a tribe, a community that's wanting who they
mm,
are, right?
mm,
Their wisdom, they're funny. So it all depends upon the personality, but I call it um, the Johnny Bravo syndrome. And for those of you who are not as old as I am, but if you've ever watched the Brady Bunch, if you've ever watched the Brady Bunch, okay, they do have they replay them. So
mm,
uh, so I think it was Greg Brady who was Johnny Bravo, or they put on the suit, right? And so what I find is that a lot of entrepreneurs will put on a suit of what they think is palpable, what they think is successful, that people are going to go, oh, well, you're successful, so I'm going to throw money at you, right? I'm going to
mm,
work with you. But that's not who they are authentically are,
mm,
right? So what we want to do, and that just takes time to sit down. Like if I'm working with somebody, I sit down and we look at everything that you're doing. We look
mm,
at your digital footprint. We Google you. I'll say, let's sit down, let's do a Google search with your name. And they'll
mm,
go, oh, really? And I go, yeah, we're going to Google you. And let's see what's there and what we
mm,
want. More importantly, not just what's there in Google land, but
mm,
what we want to see.
mm,
What would you dream of seeing when we do a Google search for you?
mm,
But looking at everything that you've already done and then what you want to become or what you want to be,
mm,
that's the journey of branding.
mm,
Personal branding is not a destination. It's the journey that you go through.
mm,
It's that massaging of when you get to a special place and you go, yeah, that's it. That's my message.
mm,
That's my brand. That's who I am. So Lisa, because you work with me, but people who don't know, I am not a LinkedIn corporate, very serious, suited
no,
professional.
you're a professional.
I'm professional, but you know what I'm saying? I'm not
Mm,
like dressed in a three-piece suit or,
yeah. Mm,
whatever, heels. Forget that. But but I keep all my teachings and things that
mm,
I bring my clients, I keep it simple, easy, and fun. We
mm,
have to have fun. Because if it's not fun, I don't want to do it. And my clients that are my tribe that are attracted to me, are people that also want to have fun and enjoy the process, right?
Mm.
So I from the get-go, I go, this is who I am. And if you don't like to work with people that are like this, then go before the house falls on you too.
Yeah, it's you've got to, but it's true. It's understanding like who you are and how you want to be seen. Like for me, I've learned on TikTok, like I'm not the person that's going to do the voiceovers. I'm not going to do the lip syncing. I'm not going to do this silly chicken dance because that is not me. I've looked at it and go, maybe I should do this. But I know
It's not
that
you.
because people will look at that and go, that looks awkward as fuck. And that is not. That's who has taken over Lisa's body. So I know me just sitting and talking about something that goes on, that's me. That's my comfort. And that's
Yeah.
where I can be authentic. If I'm doing a chicken dance just to get views and likes, that's not going to contribute because somebody who likes me doing a chicken dance, they're not going to work with me for authenticity coaching. They're not going to buy my book. That's like, because there's none of that in there. But I think that people feel like to build an audience, they've got to do the trends and do the stuff.
No.
Like you do that stuff really great because you can be very funny. My wife, Sharon, she is incredibly funny. Like one of my early TikToks we did, which you really liked, was the one with the sausage. And she like sat out there
Yeah.
having a barbecue and took a bite. She goes, "No, this is the only sausage I'm interested in."
Yeah.
But I could not have said that. Like the way she says it, and the way she does it, that's her strength. Lisa's not, that person. So it's learning to trust who you are and what your strengths are rather than going, well, everyone's doing this, I better go do this. No, you don't need to do that thing because people look at it a mile away and gives them the ick.
Well, and what works for you is that close up shot of you talking, because it's like you're talking to a dear friend, right? And your
Mm,
voice and everything that you are covering on your videos is important and relatable.
mm,
So that's your style.
mm,
And it's what you're comfortable with, but it's also what makes you appealing as well.
mm,
Now I have a wonderful woman that I follow on TikTok who's Miss Granny, Miss Mary Granny, and her whole and she's exploding on TikTok.
mm,
She is there to be the grandmother, right? The southern um grandmother that we all wish we had, hey
mm.
sugar, how you
Yeah,
doing, baby?
yeah,
I, I just want you to know you can do it. She's
yeah.
a very positive, right? And all the videos are like, and she's very vulnerable.
Mm,
I just want you to know that Granny's having a hard time today.
mm,
I've had a really hard day. Have you ever had a hard day? Do you?
yeah,
So you're like, oh my God, I love you.
yeah.
And but what she's done is she sprinkles in, because she is funny. She's a stand-up comic, by the way.
Mm.
She's actually a comedian,
Right.
and
Okay.
this is a character that she plays, right?
Mm,
It's
wow.
brilliant, brilliant. But she'll sprinkle in some humor. And just the other day, she did this video where she's got like her sunglasses on, she's got music going, and she's doing like a music video, right? And it's funny and it's cute and it's just awesome. And so I was inspired by it, and I created a video
Mm,
like hers, and said, this is for you, Lady Gigi, I think is her name.
yeah.
I go, this is for you. And she was so tickled by it that she like did like a duet with me.
Mm,
Because her spirit is very funny,
mm,
but her purpose on TikTok is to really give the world a hug.
mm,
So, it's all individual. It's
mm,
all, different things. And
mm,
while most of my content, like you said, like a lot of my content is just silly, funny, wacky stuff, because I enjoy doing that.
mm,
Recently, I've put myself out there and to be very vulnerable and to say, you know what, this is what I'm struggling with.
mm,
I'm struggling with these issues, but I'm showing up and I'm trying. And have you ever felt this way? And man,
mm.
that connects with so many people, right?
It does. And, you know, I've recently sort of really looked hard at the messaging I put out there, and it's like people want to be seen and understand what they're feeling. So a lot of my
Absolutely.
stuff now is like I see you because I've walked that path, and there is a way through that. And I'm not here to pitch you or to sell you anything. I can walk alongside you, like, no pressure, no pitch. Like, if you want to chat, chat. But if you don't, that's cool too. But just know that wherever you're stuck right now, like, I can name it and see it, and this is the way through it. Because people
Yeah.
do want to feel that hug and that emotion, and that more so than just DM me flames if you're ready to chat. Like,
Yeah.
that's, that's died, and people are still doing it. And I look at it and go, that gives me the ick. So I would never do that. But people, want that sense of hope as well. So if they're looking at your video at the end of it, you want them to feel like, maybe I could do this too.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a place, and that little bit of hope, because, life's hard in a lot of places in the world right now, and people need that little glimmer of hope. And if it's, a Southern granny giving them a hug virtually, then that gives them okay, tomorrow I can get up and try and be a little more me. Or, Christine's just shared her journey of, restarting her wellness journey. Maybe I can get out and walk around the block tomorrow. Like, you don't have to publicize it, but it just gives people that hope that they're not the only one struggling, I think is the big key.
And also it establishes that trust factor.
Mm.
It's like, wow, if she's able to be vulnerable and to share something, that's why I say this whole idea of being perfect and, oh no, everything's great, everything's fine, I've got lots of money in the bank and people are busting down my door to work with me, and I'm super fit and healthy because I'm making all the right choices. Well, that's fine if that's who your persona is, right? But the reality is that we're human beings. We're a combination of things. We have rough times in our relationships, we have rough times with our health, we have rough times in business. So being real will, and this is, I believe, moving forward, right? The days of greed, we see it falling apart. We see it every day. It's falling apart. The idea of me, mine, only what benefits me is going by the wayside. And it's more of a community, more of a collective, more of how can we help each other? Because right now we need to rely on each other, right?
Yeah. And I think, some of that, like, I did a series of posts over the last week going, you know what? I don't feel creative right now. I don't.
Yep.
And I didn't record an episode of my other podcast for about 4 weeks because I'm like, I felt the pressure to feed the algorithm, but I'm like, I don't want to record something just for the sake of it, so it feels like I'm talking at people. And when I did those posts, I had another podcasting friend from the States reach out, literally in tears, going, oh my God, I have felt this so bad, but I felt terrible about not putting out stuff, and no one has put it into words. And you've just gone and put it out there that it's okay to talk about not being creative or not feeling like you had anything valuable to say, rather than just speaking for the sake of it. And
did you create a video of that? Did you post the video about the feeling? Because that would be brilliant.
No, I haven't yet.
Because that would be great.
On today's list. Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. Like, because so many people can relate to that, and you can go, you know what? I'm going to keep this real short because.
Yep. And she was like, I just struggle to feel like I should be doing the things. I said, well, there's your first problem, is the should be. And I said, let's do a coffee date. So we jumped on a Zoom, did a coffee date, talked through some things, and she's like, okay, it's normal. I said, yeah, it's 100% normal, but we need to normalize that feeling. And again, that was me just going, instead of going, well, Lisa's a super creator, she's got all these ideas. It's okay. Like, I shut down the microdosing growth podcast. It wasn't doing what I wanted to do. It was a great concept, great idea, but I was like, it's not serving me, and I shut it down. And initially that feels like failure to me, but it's like, well, no, it took me one step closer to this, adventure. And I feel like we need to be more honest with those things, because you're right. If someone's posting that, everything's successful and everything's amazing, if someone does come and want to work with you, they're going to realize very quickly that that was a pile of horseshit. They'll pick it up straight away once they start working with you. That may have got them in, but they're not going to last, because they'll see the misalignment between what you showed them and what you are.
And if it's anything where you're spending large amounts of time with somebody, like if you're working with a coach, if you're getting guidance or a mentor, you want to like that person, you
Yeah.
know. You want
Yeah.
to be able to spend time with them and go, that was enjoyable. I learned a lot, or I grew a lot, or they fixed whatever issue I had.
Mm,
But I also really enjoy this person, and I like being with them. And if
mm.
you are coming from that perfection model, first of all, that's a lot for you to stay up
Yeah.
to, like, you
Yeah.
know,
You
to
can't.
deliver time and time again. But then also, sometimes it's a disadvantage because people who are not perfect and they don't have their shit together
Mm,
are going to be, I don't think I should work with this person because they're going to
mm.
want me to be perfect, right?
Yeah. And it's, that's one of the things, like our fortnightly mastermind call in the group that I'm in of yours. We can go, those calls are amazing. It's not just you sitting on high lecturing to us. Like 2 hours goes by and we're like, whoa,
I
it's
know.
been 2 hours. It's like, wow. Some days it's been longer. Like you're not like, well, it's 59.5 minutes, got to go kill the call. And the group of people that are on there are the among the warmest, most sincere bunch. And I've reached out to a heap of them to come on this podcast as well. But um, that time flies because you're just present and enjoying the moment. And yes, we're learning lots, and we're discussing things, and we're bouncing things around, and someone will bring a problem to the table and we'll all sort of bib in if
Yeah.
that's our thing. But that time flies because it's just fun. And it's, you're not perfect. You go, oh, I haven't hit record, or oh,
Yeah.
where's that link I was going to talk about, or have I talked about this? And you're resetting as you go and keeping up with the flow of the thing. But that's what makes it real. And we're like, I reached out to you saying, hey, I'm about to publish this book. I want to get it right. Can you help me? 100%. No problem. You said, here's some links to start with. I jumped on a call with you and we worked through it in more detail. But even other stuff, it's like, just ask your question, because that's real. If you can help, you're going to, offer that,
Absolutely.
and not just say, well, just book a call and sign up for the hour and then did it. It's none of that.
And especially if it's, what I find about, like, with the mastermind, what you're talking about in the mastermind is it's a wonderful group dynamic, small group,
Mm,
right? It's not like
mm,
lots of people. And we do help each other, but because I show up authentically, and
mm,
sometimes I forget to hit record, or I'm looking for this or that, or
mm,
somebody comes knocking at the door, right? Because of that, my hope, and it's true, that the members of the mastermind also feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable and to
mm,
say, you know, this is how I'm feeling, or
mm,
I'm the spark isn't there.
mm,
I'm not working on anything. I just need to have some downtime. And we're
mm.
supportive as a group to say, girl, you know what?
Yep,
You take that downtime.
take it. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful, very, very unique.
Mm. And I,
And we need to, that's our tribe. That's our
yeah.
little, our tribe.
And
Yeah.
I think that's been amazing. So when we talk about, like, you're building tribe, and you've got a very, visible brand yourself, you know, have you ever received any pushback by staying authentically you? This is who I am. This is what I want. Work through. And then how do you go about overcoming that and resisting the urge to shut yourself down?
Oh, there's been moments throughout my career, that I've had some different issues. Something that was a big lesson for me was when I was working at this radio station for 20 years. It's in Los Angeles. I would go on air, uh, and bring controversial subject matters, actually questioning, because I was that kid in school that when the teacher said, in the history lesson, that this happened and that happened, I'd be like in the back going, wait a second, what about the Native Americans? What about, I was
Yep.
that person. Wait a minute, what about foreign policy in the Middle East? What have we been doing all the last, 100 years? So I was bringing sort of that kind of content. And I remember there was, the audience loved it. People that I worked with loved it, but there was one particular host of a show who was absolutely had such vitriol for me, and would
Mm,
go on right after I did my show, and would insinuate that the audience was stupid for listening to me, would insinuate that I was a conspiracy theory wearing, tinfoil hat wearing, freak or whatever. And I actually, for a moment, for a split second, thought, oh my gosh, do a lot of people think this? Do I need to rethink what I'm doing? And then I was like, you know what? This is important, and this the things that I'm talking about or bringing guests on are really important critical issues, and I
Mm,
don't need to be bullied by somebody who thinks that agree with me or disagree with me. That's fine. I
mm,
don't care. But I was about ready to hide my light, right? To
mm.
tap it down, tone it down, Christine. And I said, hell no. Hell no. And I was quite successful after I said, hell no. Um, but yeah, because you're in that public sphere as well.
Mm,
And I had, because of this person, they went to the newspapers, they went to different media
mm.
and complained about me. And so I had articles. If you Google me, you'll see conspiracy theorist
Oh,
Christine Blosdale. And it's a badge that I wear proudly.
mm.
I will
I
always question authority, and I will always question the official narrative, because if not, we live in a,
yeah,
you know,
it's a dystopian world.
yeah,
And I think that particularly, I think for a lot of us who are queer creators in that space, we're really tempted to hide, and to, if someone starts to push back because you're too much, you're too loud, you're too, don't say that, it makes me uncomfortable. So then we're like, oh, well, I don't want to have any hate, so I'll just dial it down a notch or two.
yeah,
And we're not out there RuPauling it down through TikTok and everything. Like, we're not out and flamboyant and over the top. Like, it just comes up in conversation, like, yeah, my wife, your wife, whatever.
yeah,
But it's still, you have that feeling like, oh, maybe I should pull it back. And it's really hard then to make yourself stay in that space and go, nope, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm just going to keep doing my thing, because
yeah.
my message is universal about, like, for my message about, authenticity and owning your identity, that applies to everybody, even if you
Everybody.
don't want to admit to it yet. But, and the work that you do is about people having their brand and owning their story. That's universal. So we don't need to, you know, dim our light. But it's hard to stay out there.
Well, I think I'm at a point. I'm 60 years old, and you know what? I don't care anymore. I just you know
Yeah.
what? My wife is so extremely important to me. We're just like every other family. We have teenagers
Mhm.
that are messy. We have the cat that cries in the middle of the night. We're just like everybody. We don't have trapeze. We don't have S&M stuff hanging from the ceiling. We're just like a normal family.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have normal things,
Oh,
like
life stuff.
everybody. We have life stuff,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I won't hide that. The only thing I come across, and it's never in business, it's never
Mm.
on social media, it's mostly if I'm in the grocery store and I have to use the restroom, and I go to the
Yeah.
restroom, and women, because I have short hair,
Mhm.
and I'm non-binary, gender fluid.
Mm.
um Depending on the day, somebody will go, hey, you're in the wrong bathroom, or they'll
Yeah.
grab their purse. Why women do that, I don't know.
I
But
don't know.
it's like, no, I'm supposed to be in this bathroom. I'll
Yeah.
raise my voice a little bit. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be in this bathroom.
It's I followed some creators on TikTok, Megan Married Megan, and they're very
Oh
funny.
yeah, yes,
And
yeah.
they're both mask presenting, and they did a video on that where they're walking out of the bathroom, they're casually throwing out Tampax to, like, yeah, I'm meant to be in here, like, and they're walking along and they're like, yep, no, I'm all good, and hitching up the girls. And it's
Oh,
just funny, but it's sad, but it's very funny that, like, they're not shying away from it. They're like, here we are, like, yeah, this is, what happens sometimes, but here's how we deal with it and what we think of it. And it
well,
doesn't make them not produce that content.
and people will never understand like how ingrained our training is
Mm,
to think that, black, white, blue, pink, girl, boy, this,
mm,
that. You don't understand it until you go through that
mm,
process, right? Of trying to just use the restroom,
mm.
and having to go, well, when I open the stall, I need to be presenting really girly,
Yes.
whatever that
Yeah.
is. I just need to
Right.
wash my hands,
Yeah.
right? But
Yep.
it's something that we go through, and you go, oh my gosh. I remember I went to a I was at a gym in Los Angeles, and I was getting I was already dressed, and I was going to the pool, and I was in the women's locker room because I'm a woman, right? So I'm in the women's locker room, and as I'm leaving, this elderly Asian woman was there,
Mm,
and she got really upset, right? Because she was changing out of her
mm,
swimsuit into clothes. And she got really visibly upset, and she was angry, and she's like, "No, you're not supposed to be here. Get out of here." Blah 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 blah. And it was one of those days where I was like, you know what? You messed with the wrong chick. Like I was like, you know what? And I go, and I grab at that time I had breasts. I grabbed my breasts and I said, I belong here. I was angry. Okay.
yeah.
Christine did not have patience. So I go in the pool area, do my laps, and I'm still kind of steaming. Like, why can't people just leave me alone? Right. And I come back after like half an hour,
Yeah.
and she's sitting there with her, like, almost like her hands, her head in her hands, and she's sitting there. She was waiting for me,
Oh.
and she said, I am so sorry. I am so, so sorry. You
Mm,
do belong here. And she was absolutely just gutted. And then
mm,
that made me cry. And I was like, oh,
yeah.
it's okay. I promised. It's all right. I'm not mad at you. But
Yeah.
those things, now it could have gone
Could
different ways.
have.
But also being, if somebody does upset you like that, or in whatever you're doing, also understanding too, and being forgiving is really important, I think.
And I
Don't hold
talk
on to stuff.
no, and I talk a lot on my other podcast about having grace for ourselves in the journey, but also having grace for others. So
Yes.
sometimes we can feel entitled that when we come out to somebody, which you've got to do every day over and over again, but you come out and then someone doesn't give you the reaction you think you're entitled to. And it's like for me, I had wrestled with who I was for 15 years before I finally came out. And then I'm telling you, and you've known me this way for 46 and a half years, and now in 3 seconds, I've changed that perception of you. You're going to need a minute to get your head around that. So I need
Right.
to give you some grace for that time to comprehend that. And because I've had the time to process who I am, and I'm good with that, but now I need to give you that same gift of grace. And so, like that lady, like, yes, we can react in the moment, but it's also have some grace for their lived experience, and they're doing the best they can with what they know, and that's still confusing and challenging to them. Okay, like if we all just can have that grace, like you said, I wasn't angry with you. It's just like you just keep getting barraged with this stuff, and someone's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
But
And
we just need to move forward with that grace.
absolutely. And to know that there is no malice, you
Mm,
know, I think taking a step back, if we could do that as a society, as human beings, as a
oh,
species,
be
we'd
great.
save, so much
Yeah, I mean,
heartache and
I had a person join my gym when I owned it, who was non-binary, and so I sat them down. I said, "Okay, so what do you prefer to be?" And this was like 6 or 7 years ago when it was really just starting to be a thing. And I said, I'm gonna say now, I'm gonna fuck this up. Like, if there's 3 of you in a class and I say, "Let's go, girls," don't be offended. And they were really good because they said, "Listen, I don't mind because I can tell when someone's being a dick and there's malice with it versus they're just operating on autopilot." I said, "I will do my best, but sometimes if I'm just looking around a group of people and it's my 9:30 mums class and you're in there, it's going to be good work, ladies. Let's go." I
yeah,
said, "But I'm not being a dick. And, I had to explain the concept then to one of my male coaches who was in his 50s and very old school. And I said, if you're not a dick, it's fine. And he goes, that's fine. And then every class he coached would be like, good job, mate. How you going, mate? Like, that was his way of like not getting into trouble. But
Right.
we had the conversation and they were really good about it and saying, I can tell when someone's just being an asshole versus
Yeah.
it's just life experience and going on automatic pilot by what they visually see. I said, cool.
Yeah.
And that's how we went about it. Like, it didn't have to be a big thing. There was grace on both sides.
Lisa Kirkman, I think we need to rule the world.
No, I think so. It would be an amazingly fun space.
Wouldn't it be? It would be.
You could be in charge of entertainment and I'll do logistics and planning and we'd be away. So
I love that.
So I guess to detour a little bit. So we've talked a lot about how you're authentic in your work and you help other people sort of, find their own way to what their authenticity. Over your experience in your career, have you experienced like the cost of when you've not been authentic to yourself and you've strayed from your true self in your business? Like, what personally cost you felt from that or impact?
I think it's I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to developing your personal brand, right? And when you first start off, I mean, I've been coaching for a long time, a really long time. But during even the beginning and the machinations of, every single year that you grow and you learn and you're adapting, my brand was changing and morphing. And I felt in the beginning uncomfortable with that because in the beginning I was like, I should know exactly what I am and have the best title and the best branding. And the fact is, and like I said, your brand is something that it's the journey of who you're becoming. It's the same thing with your expert authority. It's not a destination. It's your journey. It's you growing, right? And so I think especially when I first started, I wanted to rush that process and to have it all nailed down. And what I've learned is that it's never fully nailed down. Okay. You can, now in some industries, if you're a real estate agent, you're a real estate agent. I sell houses. Okay. Well, that's pretty straightforward, right? But I find that with coaches, because they're so good at many different things, that they tend to, their brand is like kind of all over the place, right? And that's okay, especially when you're beginning, but just know that it's confusing for the audience that you want to serve. So that's why over the years, I've been able to sort of niche down. I mean, for a while, I was just known as the podcast coach, right? But I'm more than podcasting. I love podcasting. I love helping people create their podcast or being a guest on podcasts. But it's so much more than that. And so I take all of the stuff that I've learned through my work and with America Online and Microsoft and the radio station, and I put that into making sure that my clients are developing their expert authority so they can get booked and they can get better deals and they can get better clients. But it took a long time, and I felt that uncomfortableness for a long time, that I didn't have that, what's that perfect title, that perfect messaging. And it's something that as you grow as a coach, it will change, and it's okay that you develop that.
I'd been through that process myself when I was sort of talking about my journey coming out late in life. And then the more things that I developed, suddenly I'm like, oh shit, it's all about authenticity. And that's what it all kept coming back to, even, the cost of living with inauthenticity. And then that led into, the burn the script concept and, now this podcast, but everything comes back to owning your identity. And I'm like, that's my thing I now need to lean into, rather than, I was doing a few different things, but I'm like, this is what I need to lean into because this is my area and my message. And practically being authentic, not just using it as a warm and fuzzy, buzzword. So you're right, it does evolve, and you've got to be aware to pick up like, oh, this is like everything's linked here, like connect the dots. And then you go, oh, now that's the point of my arrow. That's where I'm heading towards. Is what I'm doing feeding into that? Yes, then that's where I
Yes.
need to go.
Yeah, and you're listening to the signs, and you're
Mm,
listening to your own positive meter. It's like when I'm
mm,
talking about this, when I'm doing this type of work, I light up like a Christmas tree.
yeah,
Well, that's a sign, right?
yeah.
That's a sign.
It's a huge sign. So to go to something a little more tactical, I guess. So for everyone who is operating in the digital or their branding space, or they feel like a message they want to get out there, but they're feeling conflicted about authenticity, what are some practical steps that you can recommend that might help them uncover and what their alignment needs to be, where they need to be, or how to start to dig into that for themselves?
I think it's really important to have someone from the outside peeking in,
Mm,
because when we, as entrepreneurs or solopreneurs, we live in a silo, we live in our basement of our mind, where it's just us against the world, right? And it's
mm,
just, if I just hammer out and work hard,
mm,
I'll be successful. And what happens is that with these blinders on, we don't get to see all of the jewels in our crown. We only see what is in front of us.
mm,
So it really helps to have someone, if it's a coach that you trust or a mentor, but somebody that you value their opinion, you value their judgment, to have them look at you almost like from the outside in,
mm,
and ask them questions. I have something on my website. It's it's an expert authority scorecard. It's a quiz.
mm,
And the
mm,
quiz is like 10 questions. And I tell people it's important that you do this quiz, because these are questions you should be asking yourself
mm,
as a business, as an entrepreneur, as a coach, as an author. These are actual questions that you should be asking yourself. And if you're low in any of these areas, that might be something that you might want to think about working on, right?
mm,
Developing, creating.
mm.
And it's really, really important to take a look. So it's a way to have a snapshot without having me take a snapshot of you. It's
Yeah.
through this quiz. So I encourage people to do that. That's at expertauthorityquiz.com, by the way.
Mhm.
But if you have somebody from the outside look, you'll be able to, a lot of times they'll be able to see what your real gifts are. They'll be able to
Mm,
see that jewel. They'll go, "Oh my gosh, you mean you do this for that?"
mm.
Yeah, I do, but nobody's interested in that. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think as solopreneurs and entrepreneurs, we're in charge of our own ship, so no one's telling us it's a dumb idea. Like,
Right. Right.
I'm I'm really lucky that my wife will quite often go, "That seems like something you shouldn't be doing, but okay." Or, "Do you think you've got enough?" Like, at one point, I had, like, 8 projects on the go. She's like, "Do you think that's enough now, or you should refine a little bit?" But generally, we're like, "This is a great idea," and go running into the fire because we don't have anyone sitting alongside us to go, "Is that in alignment with your strategic plan right now?" Or, all these processes. So 100% having someone external can be that little voice on your shoulder to either say, "What's holding you back? Run," or "Pump the brakes, cowgirl, because you said you wanted to go over here, but this is gonna take you over there. Like, where do you wanna be?"
We tend to be, as entrepreneur, we tend to be spread out all over the place. We've got
Mm.
pasta thrown on the wall, and we're like,
Yeah.
I'll try this for a while. I'll spin this plate over here.
What
I'll be,
sticks?
what sticks? Where do I go? Do I go on
Mm,
TikTok? Do I do this? Do I do that? Do I write a blog? And what I like to do is when I do strategy call with people,
mm,
where I get to sit down with them and I'll look at everything that they've got, right?
mm,
Whatever they have now and where they want to go. But I'll look at it and I'll go, right, the biggest return on investment, ROI, the biggest
mm,
bang for your buck right now is to do this.
mm,
Because if you want to reach this pinnacle, but you don't do this first step,
mm.
it's going to be a very hard slog to get to this. But
Yeah.
let's start with something easy that you can
Mm,
accomplish and be successful at. Let's start with this little nugget here. And once
mm,
we have this nugget done and you have that in your pocket, now you can go to the next step. And the next
mm,
step is this. It might be a little bit more challenging, but you got
mm,
this done, right?
mm,
So that's the thing, is having a system, but it's not really
mm.
even a system. It's just steps that you want to take. Yeah.
Yeah, and like those little micro steps, continually check in with yourself about, is this getting me to where I think it's getting me? Or am I moving 1 degree off course, 2 degrees off course, and suddenly you're facing the wrong way altogether? So I think that's super powerful. So, I mean, you and I, we've had many conversations, whether in masterminds or coaching calls or back and forth on TikTok, and we could talk for hours, but I am mindful of your time. So before we close, I've got a few standard things that I like to ask every guest. And
Go for it.
one I think is great for you is that, you know, what's one thing that people get wrong about you or assume because of your background or the work that you've done?
What's the one thing they assume? I don't know.
And
'Cause
get
I'm not
wrong.
in their heads. And that they get wrong.
Mm,
Oh my gosh. I don't know what that would be.
mm,
I don't know what that would be. You know, people see me now because I'm on video and everything, so
mm,
they see what I look like. But
mm.
for years, I was on radio for 20 years, and we would go to an event, and I'd be there, making an appearance, and people would come up to me and they go, "Girl, I thought you were black." I said, I
That's a
said,
good one.
I said, "Thank you." Because they couldn't see me, and they just
Yeah.
heard my voice, and they're like, and they go, "Oh," I said, "You're not disappointed, are you?" And they go, "No, never."
That's awesome. I really like that one.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to ask you to finish this sentence for me.
Mhm.
Authenticity in action is.
Authenticity in action is showing up, doing your best, and letting go of any expectation.
That's awesome. I like that. And I think that's the key one is the showing up, isn't it? Like you just got to keep showing up and doing your thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've built an amazing business and coaching business and, you know, written books and all the links to your amazing stuff I'll put in the notes. But what I'm really interested to know is what's lighting you up right now that's got nothing to do with business or branding, just for joy or purpose.
Oh, um, part I'm working on redecorating my house, so it's completely off. But because I
Mm,
work from home, and so my
mm,
space needs to be pretty, you know,
mhm,
I need to be able to look around and go, okay, there's not a lot of clutter there. There's
mm,
there's art. I love art. So that's one thing. Something it's so funny because so much of what I love doing is part of my business, but I'm just really excited about getting people that I know and love, getting them out on podcast shows and sharing their wisdom, their
mm.
expertise with others. And I'm knee deep. I'm neck deep in that right now, and I'm
Yeah,
working on doing some different programs to help get people exposed and get them out there on podcasts. So, because
awesome.
I love the medium. I think it's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it's so much fun, and like I can start one in half an hour and get it out there, and I just love, you know, being part of the process. And you know, I've been a guest on your TikTok influencers you really should know about podcast, and I love your Out of the Box podcast. So I'm going to put those in the show notes as well. But apart from that, like, where can people get more Christine Blosdale awesomeness in their day for your work, your coaching? Just stay in your orbit. Where's the best way to contact you?
They get everything. They can find out all the different programs I offer, my books, the podcasts that I have, the multiple podcasts that I have. They can find everything at expertauthoritycoach.com. It's
Perfect.
expertauthoritycoach.com. And if they want to take that quiz that I was mentioning, it rates, basically you want to find out where your expert authority-ness lies.
Mm.
It doesn't matter if you're a super pro or if you're just beginning, you can take the quiz, and that's expertauthorityquiz.com.
Perfect. And I'll get all of that in the show notes when this comes out. Well,
Beauty.
thank you, my friend, for your
Thank you,
time.
my
I've
love.
loved chatting to you about all things authenticity and your journey. And every time that I talk to you, I feel like I learn something a little bit more. So I know that people are going to love this episode. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, love. Thank you so much. And like I said, I'm so proud of you. You're doing great. Amazing
Thank,
job. Thank you, love.
but thank you.